Hello and welcome to this Noble Science of Defence training video. In this video we're going to have a quick look at the concept of inside and outside. Inside and outside are designations of my quarters. I have an inside quarter and an outside quarter. But inside and outside denotes which side you are attacking relative to your opponent and relative to their weapon, rather than saying left or right. I've got Michael with me today who's going to help. So Michael is one of my students. He likes to train both left and right-handed. It's not something we necessarily require, something that Michael chooses. However, for this video, inside and outside is going to be very, very useful. So if Michael has his sword in his right hand, if I move to my opponent's left side whilst he has the sword in his right hand, I will engage on my left side and on what we call the inside of my opponent's weapon. If my opponent has his sword in his left hand and I move to his left side, I'm still on my left side, but I'm now on the outside of my opponent's weapon. So I now interact differently with my opponent's weapon. So when you're in class and I say, move to your opponent's right and use this technique, and my opponent has his weapon in his right hand, and I move to the right and I use this technique, it's wonderful, it works a treat. When my opponent has his weapon in his left hand and I move to his right or my left and I do the same technique, I can often find that it fails, or it simply interacts differently to the way you were shown at the beginning of the class, and then that becomes confusing. So instead we completely remove left and right and we use inside and outside. However, inside and outside of my body, inside and outside of my weapon, and inside and outside of my opponent's weapon are the parts of this that will become relevant. So let's look at ourselves first. So if I ask Michael to move his sword into a ward to his left side, you'll see we both cover the same quarter, but we are both doing a different technique. The same if we go to the right side. And so if someone is left-handed in class and they're trying to learn, I say do a right ward and they're trying to do this, and they're going to get confused. So instead we have inside and outside. So if Michael has his sword in his left hand, puts his guard in front of him, and I say do an inside ward, you'll see we now both do the same technique, however on opposite sides. And if I say to an outside ward, we're both doing the same technique but to different sides. My inside is, and the best way that I've heard this described is your squishy bits are on the inside. This is the inside of my arm. When I hold my guard in front of me, this is the inside of my arm. This is my inside quarter. My outside quarter is everything that is outside of me. So if I am left-handed or right-handed, this makes no difference. My inside is here, Michael's inside is on this side of his weapon. My outside is here, outside of me, and Michael's outside is here, outside of him. So cover your inside quarter, inside ward, we both make the same technique on the opposite side. In class, when I am engaging my opponent, the instruction will be given to engage either on your outside or inside, or to your opponent outside or inside. My opponent has his weapon in his right hand for me, and I am going to engage on my outside. So I step to my inside, to my opponent's outside, and I make my engagement position on my outside. If my opponent has his sword in his left hand, and I've been instructed to make the engagement on my outside, I do the same. If I'm instructed to engage in relation to my opponent's blade, then it's going to change. If he has his sword in his right hand, if I am engaging to his outside, he is in his right hand, I will move to my left and engage his outside. My opponent has his sword in his left hand. Because I am now engaging in relation to my opponent, I now move to the right. You see, I'm now also changing the engagement. If he's in the right hand, then I engage on my outside. If he's in the left hand, to engage on his outside, I now engage on my inside. So it can be quite daunting to get the hang of the idea, but what you're thinking is inside and outside are more relevant than left or right. And if my opponent changes his weapon hand, then his left and right change the interaction. So an inside and an outside interaction are more important. So with my guard here, my inside is essentially where my squishy parts are. My outside is where there is an outside to me. Now, just to complicate matters, dual weapons. If I have a weapon in my offhand, a dagger or a buckler. Now, my guard sits much more like this. So now I have two outsides. If I have a single sword, my inside is my offhand, my outside is my sword hand. If I have two weapons, my outsides are my shoulder lines and my inside is my body. If I have a dual-handed weapon, then the outside remains my dominant hand. So if I have my right hand forwards, my outside will be on my right hand side. And if I'm with my left hand forwards, my outside will be on my left hand side. If it still needs more clarity and there's a way to make it clearer, please let me know in class and I'll be glad to remake this video to help make it a little easier to understand. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in class.